Well, Whitney, I am so honored to have you on. As I mentioned before I press record, that you are the perfect person to have this juicy conversation about sex and, of course, love, relationships, and all that comes in a package, as you know. So I'm so excited to get jamming on this conversation.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Well, one thing I must say, what I love most about you, I've been following you for some time. As I mentioned, I love that you show up as your authentic self and you really have no problem sharing your truth. And even if people might not agree with you, you say it as it is and you show up truly authentic. So I just want to honor that, especially. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's just who I am. I don't expect everyone to agree with it by any means, but I know that by sharing parts of my story, the good and the bad and the confusing and everything, that I can connect and support people. So I'm okay with taking a few arrows as long as it's helping people.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And it's really respected because I know when somebody shows up, they're as vulnerable and as transparent, as authentic, of course, people are going to relate more to you and be able to connect with you at a deeper level. So it's a great thing.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk about your journey, as I know you've lived many lives and you're still at a very young age. So can you share what brought you into what I know about you? You were former Miss USA, and then you actually completely pivoted. And what I would say complete polar opposite is becoming a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So I'd love to hear kind of your journey in that space.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I've lived multiple lives, I feel like. So I look back at the pageant days and it's almost like that doesn't, it's like, wow, I did that. But yeah, for me, I was always wanting to try new things. I wanted to challenge myself. And so prior to entering in Miss United States and Miss Texas, I was surfing and I was competing in surfing at a professional level here in Austin for wake surfing. And so that was my life. I was just always on the lake, like very tomboy, very athletic. And a friend of mine said, hey, do you want to come compete in Miss Texas? And it was the following weekend. So I had to borrow my shoes and my dress and like get everything together for that. And for me, it was just like, why not? Let's give it a try and just see what happens. And it ended up working out really well. Because I was, I won Miss Texas and then went on to Miss United States and won that as well. But during that time, again, I always had this mindset of, okay, so what's next? And what is something that I can do to challenge myself and challenge really the world around me? Because a lot of the times when you win something like that, it's like, okay, great. I was 22 at the time, but they're saying, and I was just in a relationship and they're saying, okay, great. So you guys are going to get married now, right? Married and have kids and go on that route, which is a beautiful route for people to take, but that was just not me at all. And I just wanted to challenge it. So I said, what's the hardest thing that I could possibly do? And it was go into MMA and train Brazilian jiu-jitsu and do a bunch of jiu-jitsu tournaments and eventually take a boxing fight a couple of years ago, which was such a fun and terrifying experience that I had. But that was exactly what I wanted to completely just blow the idea of what society put on me as a beauty queen or as, an MMA fighter. These are the things that they have to look like. And I was like, nah, we're not going to play that game. I'm going to show you something different.
Oh, wow. Well, so would you say being in the beauty pageant and winning Miss USA and everything, do you feel like you're showing up as your authentic self? Because it seemed like you were searching for more, another side of yourself. Do you feel like possibly that when you were doing Miss USA that there was a part of you missing and that wasn't really fully...
You would think, because when you see pageants, you see these girls who are beautiful and they can walk and they can stand and they can smile and they can answer questions beautifully. But for me going into that pageant, I said to myself, look, I'm going in as completely as myself, as authentically as possible. I'm not going in. I even told the judge during interview, he goes, you're such a free spirit. Why are you doing pageants? And I said, because of that reason. I'm not sitting here giving you the answers I think you want to hear. I'm actually just being genuine, because if I were to win this crown, I want girls to look up to someone who is super real and who talks about the times that I mess up and the times that don't make sense for me, and doesn't just put on a pretty face. So for me, that was the interwoven really deeply into why I wanted to do pageants. And I was a competitor my entire life. So I took the athletic, I'm going to compete for something because I'm not necessarily competing right now. So let me bring my athletic mindset into pageantry. So yeah, I think I went at it a little bit different than most people do. I also didn't allow anyone to train me, so I'm sure I was a really annoying queen to have, because you always get these coaches that, teach you how to stand and where to look and what to say and what to wear. And I knew from past experience that stifled my actual voice, and I wasn't okay with that. And so I said, no, I'm not going to work with any coaches. If I win, I'm going to win just based off of however I decide to go up that day.
That's amazing that you just showed up as is. And that's probably honestly the reason why you won, because you just radiate confidence within yourself, right? And just showing up as your authentic self. That's amazing. Well, let's talk about it, because it sounds like you're really into sports. So when you were talking about being in this relationship, how did you balance the polarity of the masculine and feminine in your relationship when you're doing these very masculine, as they would say, masculine sports, right?
So in my intimate relationships, yeah, that was always a bit of a challenge for me, because I hold the masculine. I'm very in touch with my masculine side, and my feminine side has always felt a little unsafe for me through past experiences from relationships, and I just didn't trust it all that much. So it was definitely a pattern that I had to really dive into, and I did it by, honestly, plant medicine is what really helped me look at that. I also did it by working with people who do a lot of inner child work and welcoming that side of me in and realizing that this is really safe for me to have here. I was also in a relationship, thankfully, that worked with an extremely masculine polarity. So he held that masculine side down, even though I was still feminine, but our poles were definitely tilting towards the more masculine side. So I think at that time in my life, it wouldn't have been possible to be in a long-term relationship with anybody who wasn't really strongly holding that masculine polarity down.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And actually, it's probably a whole topic in itself, but what I find fascinating is you mentioning like you weren't so in touch with that feminine side. And I think I really believe in having that polarity. I've had a relationship where it's been kind of switched, and when you're with a really masculine man and you are bringing this masculine energy as well, it throws everything off. So
right.
You said that you did the plant medicine, but is there anything else you suggest for a female that might be more masculine, how they could be more in touch with their feminine side?
Yeah. So, also, like I said, doing inner child work was really beneficial for me. And there's a lot of meditations that you can do, but there's also, people who specialize in this. And for me, having a specialized kind of guide to be able to dive into these areas with me was so beneficial. I also know that a lot of the times when women hold down the masculine side, at least particularly for me, it's hard to make friends with girls because you're constantly competitive with them. And we're also in a society that says that we need to be competitive with women. I think that's starting to shift, which is very exciting. But yeah, really diving into that and seeing like, okay, do I have a lot of girlfriends in my life, like really solid friendships, and am I supporting them? And how can I support them more? And lean into that, use that vulnerability that's there, because that will ultimately create the connection with, the outside world. And it will ultimately create the connection within yourself. And just doing more, for me, I was always like, go, I have to do this. I have to accomplish this. I need to play this sport and I have to be the best at it. And I definitely still have that mindset, but it's a little bit softer now. And it's just by doing things that I didn't necessarily think were fun. So it would be reading poetry, slowing down a little bit, I was doing, more yin yoga. And so like certain things that were just slowing down instead of just being this energizer bunny constantly going and not listening.
Yeah. So being very intentional in trying these things that actually connect you more with your feminine side.
Yes.
That's great. I love that. Well, let's dive into relationships. I already know you. You're already very transparent with so many
Oh
things.
yeah,
So
girl. Let's
all
do
right.
it.
So I know you had a very open relationship, open in many forms, but very public relationship with Aubrey Marcus.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously your relationship transitioned into an open relationship. So I'd love if you could share kind of the journey of that, because I know you've learned many lessons in that. And I know this conversation isn't necessarily geared towards open relationship, but I want to share part of your journey within that, the lessons, and then we could go into so much more.
Cool. Yeah. So I was in a about 8-year relationship with Aubrey. We were monogamous for 2 years, and then he read this book, Sex at Dawn, by Dr. Chris Ryan, who's a good friend of ours. Great book. And he decided he wanted to be in an open relationship. And I was like, hell no, I am not doing an open relationship. So we split up. I went traveling for a while. I met somebody while I was traveling, and we hit it off. And I realized, oh, wow, I can actually enjoy someone else and like enjoy that connection with somebody else, but still very much so be in love with Aubrey. And so that was the first light bulb for me. Oh, maybe this actually is possible, because beforehand it was just absolutely not. I'll never be able to do that. I was always super jealous in all of my past relationships. I was the one going through phones. I was like looking through the house for hair follicles, like to the extreme. I was stressing myself out. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
And I was also cheating in my past relationships. And that was just how I went through a relationship. And so getting into this open relationship, I said, there's something about relationships for me that it just isn't working. And I don't have another idea of what a relationship could look like, because in our society, it's monogamy or nothing. And I went into this open relationship saying, like, I have no idea how this is going to go. This could go completely up in flames, or this could be the best thing ever. I truly have no clue, but I'm going to try it. And that way I'll have my answer. I won't be wondering what if. So we tried it. We were in a relationship from there for about 5.5 years. And a lot of it was hell, and a lot of it was beauty, but as the highest of highs with the lowest of lows, because I always say when it comes to open relationships is, if you're not committed to looking at your stuff, if you're not committed to looking at any of the jealousies or the fears or the insecurities or past traumas, it's pointless. Like, don't even enter into it, because this puts a magnifying glass on absolutely everything. And you have to be willing to look at that. And it's hard, but it taught me so much about who I am and why I do what I do, and why I was cheating in the past, and why I didn't feel like I could speak my truth, and why I wouldn't speak my truth. And so it helped me understand my jealousies, because I got curious as to, why am I actually being jealous right now? What story, what narrative am I creating that's making me feel really jealous, even though that may not be the actuality of what's happening. It also brought me really close to girlfriends. And when I say this to people, they're like, how is that possible? Because you would think it would be the complete opposite. You're sharing your man, so you should hate them. And I did, for sure, hate them at one point. But I realized that I had to support them and see them as a friend and as an ally, as opposed to a threat. And so now I'm able to go through, relationships, friendships with women, in a very like conscious, loving, supportive way that I don't think I would have ever been able to get to, just coming from my background of being so competitive with women. It just completely broke every thought and pattern and conditioning that I had, and gave me the opportunity to look at it and be like, do I want this, or do I not want this? And does this serve me, or does this not serve me?
Were you constantly going through that cycle? Because 5.5 years is a long time of going through the highs and the lows,
Yeah, it's always something. It was always something, because you would be like, okay, great. I think I got it. I think I can handle this. I understand it now. And then it'd be like, no. You still have this area that you didn't look at. and this happens, and it still just picks you and points you to where you haven't been looking. And does it get easier? 100% it gets easier, because I went from being extremely jealous to being very happy in an open relationship. And would I still get jealous? Yeah, I would. Would it still be hard? Yeah, I would. But the way that I was able to work through it and handle it was completely different.
It's like you put yourself through this massive journey of test. Like it was to test you to the fullest extent. It seems like it's not for everybody, of course, because like you said, especially coming from being a jealous woman to being tested this whole time, this whole journey, and strengthening yourself, which is fascinating, because I don't think many women could go through that just mentally. Like they would be shy of it, you know? So
and the thing is there's so much. Yeah. I always talk about that. I'm not like a proponent for open. I don't think everyone should be in an open relationship. Absolutely not. But I also don't think everyone needs to be in a monogamous relationship. I think it's, you know, we have these options to create whatever relationship you truly want to be in that allows you to thrive. And that's what's so exciting about being humans. As much as we differentiate, our relationships should, at least in my opinion, be accepted and supported to be as different as the two people within it. And so many of the lessons that I learned from open will absolutely help within a fully monogamous relationship, when it comes to communication, when it comes to conflict resolution, when it comes to connection, intimacy, sex. The entire thing is, we can sit here and like, you know, point fingers and be like, oh, they're in an open relationship, that's weird, or they're in a monogamous relationship, when really there's so much that each other can learn and strengthen whatever relationship construct they're in. So that was a really cool like light bulb for me, because now moving forward, I am interested in being in a monogamous relationship. And I know that I am such a better person, and like, I will be such a better partner just for going through, you know, the trials and tribulations of an open relationship.
Mm-hmm. That's what I love so much that you and Aubrey do share, is how much you've grown and blossomed in this relationship individually. And I think that's what I believe if we're not growing, we're dying, and we should be constantly evolving and becoming the best version of ourselves. So I think that's so beautiful that you share that journey so openly, so you could help others like actually want to evolve themselves individually. I think that's important. And it really starts from us. So, I mean, that's why I think is so fascinating that you were able to see, like you actually looked within yourself, like, why am I feeling this way? And I don't think so many people will do that. So that's in itself is so powerful, you know?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, everything starts from there. I mean, it will improve your intimate relationships, your friendships, career, just everything.
Yeah. And I'm curious. So I imagine you had a lot of judgment, being so public about your relationship. How did you handle that judgment, or, you know, people possibly not agreeing with you? How did you handle it, would you say?
You know, at first it was challenging, because it's like, wow, I'm just living my life. And I didn't realize that by me being in a relationship, or what I chose to do with my sex life, really would trigger so many other people. You know, it's like, this is on me. I don't know why you're getting so upset, but it really is true, because we are shaking the foundation of people's emotional beings, basically, you know? So it's like, we can hold on so tight to monogamy and all of these things, but it's like, okay, now me and Aubrey are out there speaking. We're kind of a bridge for that community. You know, he was the CEO of On It, to being in an open relationships. And usually you don't see like CEO, open relationships, is successful. You know, me coming from the pageants and into like, sports broadcasting, and like our backgrounds, when you think of people in an open relationship, usually don't fit in with that, just because of being stereotypical a little bit. And so we realized that, you know, between me and him, we're doing this and we want to share it because we know that it's going to help. So for every judgment that we got thousands of thank you so much for talking about this. You have no idea how important this is to me. You have no idea what this feels like to feel like I have a community, you know? And so it was like, okay, we can, like I said earlier, like we can sit here and take the arrows because we know that we're helping so many other people. And, you know, for the people who judged, my question was always exactly that, you know, what is it about this that's really triggering you and why?
Yeah.
Like, let's get curious about that.
I love that. Absolutely. And I think that's the thing is like whatever, I think when people start to share their story and be vulnerable and transparent, there's always going to be somebody that is like, oh, I feel that way too. And I didn't know how to process those emotions, but now I want to learn more, you know? So
Yeah.
exactly. That's such a blessing that you guys were willing on taking the hits, even if it was uncomfortable. And that's what's so amazing is just being authentically you, living your truth in your life and letting be a sounding board for others. So it's great.
Thanks. Yeah.
So I know you transitioned into becoming a relationship coach because you realized, well, you learned all these things through your own personal journey. And I'm just curious, what was like the turning point or the aha moment where you're like, oh, I could actually teach this to not only people seeking per se an open relationship, but others, because there's so many facets I've learned.
Yeah, I actually had there was an aha moment. And it's funny because when I look back at my life, I don't have too many of those, but this one in particular, at that point, I had my dream job. I was working for Glory Kickboxing and I was a sports commentator for ESPN for fighting, which I loved. I got to travel the world, you know, twice a month everywhere for these fights. It was awesome. And I was giving an interview at Madison Square Garden in ring on ESPN Live with one of the world champions. And I'm sitting there with my microphone getting ready to interview him. And I just heard, why are you telling his story when you have a story to tell? And it was like, oh wow, like, great. Now I have to quit my job. And it was that. It was like, oh, you're right. I don't want to just be this talking head, even though I loved it. And they have beautiful stories and I love being able to, you know, shine the light on them as well. But for me, it was like, no, you have so much more that you can give. And so from there, you know, I was already simultaneously being hit up constantly, like, how do we do this? What happens if this, you know, this comes up? What if someone says this? How do we, and it was just all of these questions to where I had lived it at that point for 4.5 years. And I was giving advice already. And I just realized like, this is where I feel really passionate. And this is where I feel fulfilled. And this is where I know that I can help the most people in a way that feels so amazing for me. And so within a couple of weeks, I quit my job at Glory, and that was really hard. And I just said, let's go and let's just see what happens.
That's amazing. I love that. That's such a great story. So I'm curious. I actually heard this the other day. It was a relationship coach that has served many, many people, thousands of people. And the one thing she said, I was kind of intrigued by because I would never think this, that she said, you should never go as a couple to a relationship coach. You should go as just yourself. What do you think about that? Because I find that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I would want to know why she says that, but I work with couples and it helps them with communication. I think and being kind of like a mediator and a witness and being able to help guide them to, you know, the conversations that they really want to have. I think if you want to go to a relationship coach with a couple, with your partner, then go to a relationship coach with your partner. Like this is up to you and your process. Now, do I think there is merit and benefit in being able to solely talk one-on-one? Yes, absolutely. So a lot of the times what I will do is I'll do 3 sessions or however many, for example, but I'll do, you know, one with one partner, one with the other partner, and then we'll come together at the end. And so, because you can feel more comfortable talking one-on-one when your partner isn't there, you just get to relax a little bit. Your defenses are down because you don't want to hurt them. You don't want to say something wrong. And so I do think that it's beneficial to be one-on-one, but I also think it can really benefit the relationship to have someone to help, you know, be there with the couple.
Yeah, I agree. I was kind of surprised to hear that. She was like, the one takeaway, if you're going to take away anything, is that. And I'm like, wow, okay, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, she's
Anyway.
built very certain on it. I mean, I'm
I know.
interested to be like, please tell me more. Why?
Yeah, I think she was just talking about exactly like our own personal growth and things we need to look at with like turning the mirror on ourselves and how we can improve, opposed to like thinking, oh, the partner needs to improve too. I think that's where she was coming from, which I agree. We all need to do our inner work. And I'm curious, in learning more about yourself and your triggers and everything, where or how do you think we could best connect with ourselves on a personal level to get really in tune with our own body and comfortable in our body, like our sexuality and everything?
I think that's going to be personalized to each person to really know what brings out the most in them. But I always want to do as much reading and podcasting as I possibly can. Particularly when it comes to women and connecting and feeling safe within their bodies. One of the ways that I find it just really beautiful is a self-pleasure practice. And a lot of women don't even look at their vulvas. You know, we have no idea what it looks like. And we're like, we have shame surrounding it, but you know, allowing yourself to give yourself 30, 45 minutes, maybe, to just really dive in and touch yourself and feel, and also feel if there's any emotions that are coming up and being able to welcome that in as well. Because sometimes there's going to be anger. Sometimes you want to laugh. Sometimes you want to cry. You know, there's so much built up tension and emotion stuck in our body. And I think by doing a self-pleasure practice, it starts to move that out, and being able to connect in that way, I think broadens and expands, you know, everything, because you're claiming that part of you. Like, I deserve this.
Mm. Yeah, I'm actually kind of curious about that. Do you feel that in a relationship, especially, that can enhance the sex life with your partner by doing self-pleasuring?
Can it enhance what? Sorry.
Do you think that enhances the sex life with your partner by doing pleasuring yourself?
Totally, 100%. Because you get to learn what you really want and what you really desire. Some of us don't know what we want. You know, some of us, like myself, grew up having sexual encounters that weren't all that pleasurable for me. I was there, you know, to put their pleasure ahead of mine, because that's what I've always been taught. That's what I'm here, you know, to do. So being able to dive in with the self-pleasuring practices allows you to just get more in tune with who you are and what makes you tick and what gives you pleasure. And then I think moving from there is having the confidence to know that your wants and needs and desires are very, very important, and important enough to speak it. Because we may know it, but then speaking it is sometimes the hardest part for a lot of women.
Absolutely.
And men too, but a lot of women, you know, it's like using that voice and standing up for ourselves and that power. And maybe it's hard to see the connection of the two, but I guarantee you, the more that you self-pleasure and understand your body and understand who you are, the more you'll start reclaiming that power within who you are and express it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what's your favorite sex toy?
Ooh,
Let's start with pleasuring yourself. What would you recommend?
For me, so I love a glass dildo. I have a glass dildo that's really beautiful. And some people, here's the other thing, y'all, like some people like vibration. Some people don't like vibration. Some people like glass. Some people don't like glass. So, but for me specifically, I love a beautiful glass dildo. Plus it's like super hygienic. And then I love a good bullet vibrator. And you can go on to Dom, like or is it Dame? I think it might be Dame, Dame. They have some of my favorite toys on there. And I mean, you just get a little like vibrator for clitoral stimulation. I'm all about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've used one of those. The bullets are good, simple, easy to get. Yeah. So, well, let's kind of let's bring it back. So relationship coaching, since that's one of the things you do, what is the most common thing that people come to you for?
A lot of it is, you know, communication and being able to express what they want in their relationship. It's interesting because people will come to me and we'll start talking and they're like, yes, these are the things that I want in my relationship, but I'm just not getting it. And I asked, well, have you guys talked about it? Have you ever expressed that you want that? And they're like, no. And it's just like, okay, well, this is step one. So what do we need to do? First and foremost, why are you not expressing it? So that starts with the self, as we talked about, right? Everything starts with the self. So I love to dive in to what's really going on with them. What are the reasons they feel like they can't express it? Did it come from the past? And how we can get them to a place of being like, yeah, you're right. That does feel really good to me. And I'm going to step up into my power within that. So, I mean, really so much of this comes down to communication.
Yeah. Okay. So I agree. That is probably number one. The hardest thing for people to do is actually communicate what they want. And that's in everything in our life, right? Business or relationships, anything. So where do we begin? How do we have that conversation with our partner, especially when let's say we've been in a long-term relationship and we're ready and we're feeling, maybe work or stress or just everyday life where we've gotten to this, if you want to say, a normal routine and it's stagnant, but we want to bring up the passion again like it used to be. When we sit down to have this conversation with our partner, where do we begin? Like, how do we start this conversation so it's received well?
I think being vulnerable, starting the conversation saying, look, this is a little uncomfortable for me. I don't really know what to say or how this is going to come out, but this is for the betterment of the relationship. So breaking the ice of just being like, hey, I feel a little funny, or I feel a little awkward, or I'm a little scared, or I'm excited, whatever it is, to just allow them to see you and your emotions through that. And then moving from there, a lot of the times people have a hard time really speaking it. So if that's if that's your main thing, like you just cannot do it, write it down. Like write it down on a piece of paper, bring it with you, and be able to you don't even have to, you could just read it off of there, but at least you're practicing, you're flexing that muscle of talking about it. And if we're talking about passion and sex, I always like to open the door to say hey, what's the best way that I can be the best lover for you? What are the things that you really love that we do together? And so it kind of opens the door to let's start talking about our sex life and see what we do that I can do to be a better lover for you, and pleasure you in ways, and vice versa. So it starts to open the door instead of just being like, hey, by the way, you really need to start playing with my nipples, and you don't ever play with my nipples, And so the other person can get a little defensive because their ego is like, what do you mean? So it's just how can we be the best lovers for each other?
Yeah. And also probably picking the best time to have that conversation, like actually planning a time, setting it, where you're able to be vulnerable and transparent with each other.
Yeah. And you're not being pulled on by the kids, or there's a whole lot going on in the background. It's like, okay, this is you guys getting down, sitting down together and just connecting in that way, really seeing each other.
Do you, in regards to keeping the passion alive, do you feel partners need to create new experiences to really reignite things, like trying something new, or especially if you're in a long relationship?
It doesn't hurt. Why not? Try it out. See if you like it. It doesn't mean that you always have to keep doing it. Let's try this to see if we like it. I think there's also, deepening the sexual intimacy within each other isn't always, putting wigs on and trying the sex toy. It's okay, like we talked about, let's really connect. Let's maybe do some breathing together. Maybe we try some eye gazing. Maybe we just try some tantra. What are the ways that we can connect in that way? I think the other thing is, that a lot of people don't talk about, is if there's a lot of resentment or unsaid things, or there's insecurities, that will ultimately drive a wedge between you guys. I always say that resentment is the monster that eats love. And if you're not talking about this, most likely you're not going to feel passionate and feel open to being sexual with your partner. So yes, if you're in a long-term relationship, the passion and everything can wane, but start to look inward and be like, am I holding on to certain things that are keeping me blocked from being open to my partner in that way?
I love that you brought that up, because I think that could definitely be, if you want to say, a roadblock in that passion, in that intimacy, and things that people aren't even aware of. So yeah, I completely agree. What would be some of the things that you like to recommend to couples that that want to reignite that passion? What would be like your suggestions?
Well, yeah, communicate. My friend of mine, Dr. Emily Moore, says communication is lubrication. So let's do that. Let's start talking about it.
Love that.
Yeah. And, there's other things that actually can heighten, desire for your partner, which is simple things like doing something that increases adrenaline. So doing something that's a little bit fearful for you guys, like with that flood of chemicals in your body, you tend to be more sexually aroused by your partner. Working out is even something when you see your partner sweating and the pheromones are going. Also, don't get ready together. Like if you're going on a date night, don't be in the same bathroom getting ready together while he's shaving his nose hairs and you're plucking your eyebrows. Like take your time to say, okay, we're going on a date and we're gonna put our effort into this. And then I think the other thing too is like we talked about, looking at any of the resentments that's keeping you maybe closed off to them. One practice that I love that I think is amazing is a vulva and penis massage. And so it's basically your partner, lays back for 30 minutes or whatever it is. And Layla Martin I'm taking her course, and this is something that she talks about too, is you just give them full pleasure. So they aren't there to pleasure you. It's just, okay, I'm going to give them full pleasure and understand their body and get to listen and see how she moves or he moves. And that can be a really eye-opening experience.
I love all those recommendations. So, and how about for somebody that's having a decreased libido, that actually like their sex drive has diminished quite a bit? Is there anything you recommend to heighten that? Anything to eat, for example, or supplements? I know there, natural ways, right?
Yeah,
Ideally.
there are natural ways. I'm not particularly sure on exactly what supplements or foods or anything. We did have someone on our podcast, Dr. Chris Creatura, and she's a gynecologist, and she talked a little bit about this. We also had another woman, Adrienne Rommel, and I believe it's her last name, and she talks a lot about nutrition for vaginal health and for sexual desire. And so I'm not sure right off of the top of my head about that, but now I'm even more interested. I'm like, I need to go do some research on that.
Yeah. I'm just curious because some people actually have decreased libido. So it's not about necessarily all the things you listed. It could actually be like a medical thing, right? Or an age and whatnot. So.
Yeah, exactly. And there is, if you want to increase your, I think it's nitric oxide that you can get from beets, have a lot of it. And they have these beets powders, great for men as well. Beet powder that you can just put in your water a little bit, before you want to get turned on, or just kind of see how that is. And that's a natural way of boosting your arousal.
Great. That's great. And then
CBD
the
is
other
also
thing
another good one, I think.
CBD? Oh, really? Okay.
I use CBD a lot.
Okay, that's good to know. Great. I love it. And then the other thing is in the bedroom. So of course, if you bring certain things in the bedroom or do certain things, it's not going to even create that moment, right? So what do you recommend we avoid to bring in the bedroom so we could at least take out the things that aren't serving us, right?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, if you're going to talk about new things to try in the bedroom or what you want to do it outside of the bedroom. Don't do it when you're in the moment, because people are already in like a vulnerable state, and so talk about the things you want to try or don't want to do anymore outside of the bedroom, and then go in the bedroom and try these things. I mean, we hear it all the time, but phones, TV, anything that takes your, takes your attention and can distract you from really connecting with your partner, I think is get it out of there. If we're here to really connect, we're here to really connect.
Yeah. And so many people don't follow that. So
no, everyone's like, I have to have my phone with me. Are you kidding?
Yeah, I know. It's one thing that we should realize, like that could be one of the problems, right? So.
Yeah. I mean, if you're sitting in bed and you're just scrolling through Instagram and you're sitting next to your partner, just scrolling, instead of having your phone, like imagine if you just put your phone away for 30 minutes prior to going to bed, and you guys either have to talk or someone's going to start touching you, or maybe you get a massage. Like there is a lot that can happen within that 30-minute period instead of just scrolling aimlessly through Instagram.
Yeah, that's so true. And so you mentioned that you're now seeking a monogamous relationship. So I don't know if you're in a relationship right now. No. So sorry, go ahead. No, so I'm curious. So with everything you've learned, for what reason, because you said you were happy in the relationship you were in, in the open relationship, what made you seek a relationship, a monogamous relationship?
It's just, I think relationships can shift throughout whatever point you are in your life, and so for me, an open relationship was perfect for then. And then now the stage that I'm in, I'm a monogamous one is for me at this point, but I'm also not saying that I'll be monogamous for the rest of my life. The only relationship that I do not want to be in is a relationship to where we can't talk about the agreements that we set changing at some point. So yeah, I'm interested in how I can show up as a partner within that monogamous container. Yeah. So it's just like, that's just where I am.
Yeah. Well, I love it. So what else can we talk about sex? Let me think. I mean, really, I think this conversation with you is about deepening a relationship with your partner or a partner that you desire to have, and creating better sex in the relationship. I think we talked about so many things. And I think it really comes down to exploring ideas and also talking about the things you're uncomfortable about, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, sex is fun, and like use it to be enjoyable and pleasurable and deepen the connection with your partner, but also deepen the connection with yourself. Some of my favorite books that I love is I'm looking at them right now. The Erotic Impulse is really good. The Ultimate Guide to Kink is really good. It takes you through the full range. There's going to be stuff in there that you're like, whoa, Whitney, never going to do that. And that's totally fine. But there's also like gives you vocabulary and ways to try out new kink. The Anatomy of Women's Arousal, I think, is amazing, particularly for women and men. They have little hot tips in there for your partner that they can read to learn how to pleasure you. She Comes First is another great book. So, I mean, I think just diving into this and just seeing what feels good. I also love Justin Miller. Tell Me What You Want. He talks about fantasies and the range of fantasy, because there's so much taboo that's around, should I be liking this? Should I not like this? Should I like this type of porn? How normal is this? And he just lays it out and basically is like, look, whatever you're fantasizing about is normal. And this is the full range of it.
Yeah. I think when it comes down to it, I think it's just being okay with having these ideas or these thoughts that you want something to experience something, and just being okay because other people are experiencing it or thinking about it as well. So It's not abnormal per se.
Oh, it's not.
I love that. And your podcast, you talk obviously a lot about all this. So what is your podcast called again?
It's called True Sex and Wild Love. I co-host it with Dr. Wednesday Martin, who wrote the book Untrue, which I also highly, highly recommend. Such a fun book to read. That was the one to me that I was like, wow, she feels me. She understands me. So that's called Untrue. But yeah, we release a podcast every Thursday. I just released one this morning, which was actually with one of my best friend, Stephanie McBride, who was the third in our open relationship for 5 years. So she gets to hear from her perspective what it was like being in the relationship. Because so often you hear solely just from me and Aubrey or the primary partners, but you get the other perspective of the people who are coming into the primary partnership. So it was a really fun podcast that came out today.
Oh, that's interesting. I can't wait to hear it. Awesome. Well, I always close with 2 questions. So if you were to write a book, what would be a piece of advice you leave on the first page for others?
To trust yourself, I would say, to really step into your power and trust that you're worthy, and that speaking that into this world is the most beautiful thing that you can possibly do for yourself and anyone.
Yes, yes, all that. And then what does a passionate, purposeful life look like to you?
Oh man, living fully expressed, like knowing the full ranges of your human experience and what that can look like. I mean, it makes me excited just thinking about it because it's the full range. It's the crap and the sadness, but like feeling that, and it's the happiness and the bliss and the ecstasy and really feeling that. So to me, it's just the more that you can be a fully expressed human being in all of the ways and really know yourself, that's passionate and purpose living.
I love that. That is not what anybody has ever answered. And I
Oh,
love that
really?
because that is because you're living just fully you, and you're able to live the full spectrum of everything, the hurt, the pain, and whatever, but you're happy being in that whole space of experiencing life, right?
Yeah.
I love that.
I
It's
mean,
amazing.
that's where we have the most fun. You're not trying to be anything else. You're just trying to go through this life and learn as much as you can about yourself. And look, we're on earth and this is a playground. Like, this is truly a playground that we get to go out and experience and connect with people and eat amazing food and travel to amazing places and just go for it. Do it. Give yourself the permission to enjoy that.
Oh, yes. I love it. And where can people follow you?
So on everything, Twitter and Instagram, I'm most active, and it's Wit in Love, WHITNLOVE. And yeah, you can check me out there. My podcast is True Sex and Wild Love. And then in a few weeks, I'm coming out with a 4-month relationship mentorship. So I'm really excited about that. So keep an
Wow.
eye out.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much, Whitney. This has been such an honor. And like I said, you're the perfect person to have this conversation with, because I knew it was going to be raw, real, and truly authentic. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.